Hello and welcome to 9 p.m. with Galinsky. Super excited to be here. Tonight's guest is David Loud. David Loud occupies a unique place in Broadway history. In addition to his distinguished career as one of Broadway's most respected music directors and arrangers, he originated 3 Broadway roles as an actor, including his appearance in the original cast of Stephen Sondheim's legendary failure and cult classic Merrily We Roll Along, directed by Harold Prince. In a career spanning several decades, he served as musical director for the original Broadway productions of Ragtime Curtain, The Visit, the Scottsboro Boys. There's so many, it's hard to get them out of the mouth, and so many more. So please join me in welcoming David Loud to 9 p.m. with Galinsky. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hello. It's so nice to be here.
Great to have you here. I want to talk to you about your book, Facing the Music. I also want to talk to you about your history and also your present day life and what you're doing, what you're working on. But before we do, I got a chance to read the book. And one of the things that popped for me was that you said music has consequences. It's something your music teacher as a child, Miss Korn, told you. Can you tell us, what does that mean to you? Music has consequences.
Well, it's meant different things to me throughout my whole life. And I think what she was saying to me when she said that to a 6-year-old boy in a piano lesson was, be careful before you go to the next note, because you want to make sure that you're playing it the way the composer taught it, the way the composer wrote it. She was saying that I was playing without thinking about the music that I was playing. And it was a point that I somehow understood what she was saying. She was saying music matters, and music has an effect on the world, and music has an effect on people and our emotions. And in order to understand it, you have to think about it. You can't just play it. That's what I think she was trying to communicate to me.
Notes can't be played rote, right?
They can't be played rote, and why would you want to? I think was behind it, because the beauty of the next note that Mozart chose after those first 3 is what makes him Mozart. Anybody could have written G, but he chose B flat, and that's something that I have tried to keep with me my whole life as a musician and an arranger and conductor. And as I say, it's meant different things to me throughout my life, but she nailed something essential about music to me.
And you got that at 6 years old. It sounds like an analogy that kind of can apply to a lot of other things in life. It sounds to me she comes from a very Zen approach, which is to appreciate, the moment you're in.
Actually be there, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's something that I discovered in a new way at the end of my career when I was conducting The Visit on Broadway. I found myself able to conduct the show in the present tense, meaning I wasn't trying to hit my marks from last night. I wasn't trying to duplicate last night's performance. I was doing tonight's performance with the musicians that were gathered before me, the audience that was behind me, the actors up on stage. It seems like an easy thing to do, but it took me my whole career to figure out actually how to do that.
Yeah, let's stay in your childhood for a moment. You also mentioned that your dad, I'll let you tell the story, but your dad marched you up the mountains. And again, another, at the time, maybe not known as a lesson, but maybe something you've extracted from that. You said you wanted to just play piano, and that's what you wanted to do. Can you tell us a little about how that has affected you?
Yes. I ended up in somebody else's childhood somehow. I was at the wrong school, I thought. I was at the wrong things were being emphasized in my life. I went to North Country School, which is this marvelous, petite campus up in the Adirondacks for about 100 kids, 4th through 8th graders. And my parents taught at the school, so I was a fact brat. I kind of lived there and went there. And the emphasis of the school was on organic farming and mountain climbing and connecting children to the earth.
So of course you would become a Broadway arranger with that kind of.
Exactly. But all I wanted was tap dancing choruses and, pit orchestras and Broadway, Broadway, Broadway. I did find a wonderful music teacher at North Country School who was a very inspiring example of somebody who had made their life as an artist. And I latched onto him and his marvelous, he wrote musicals for us every year, depending on which kids in the school inspired him. If there was a girl who reminded him of Cleopatra, then there was a musical about Cleopatra that year. And he didn't write down to us. He wrote above our heads, actually. And I thought that was pretty splendid. North Country School was a great place to go, but the lessons I learned there did not seem immediately applicable to me. Much later in my life, I understood finally that really some of the things that they were teaching me about community and about the secret to mountain climbing, which I discovered was putting one foot in front of the other until you get to the top. Eventually, those things started to ring true to me, but at the time I was resentful that I was not, at some arts prep school. And
Gotcha.
in a way, thank God I wasn't, because I got a much more rounded education and different lessons than I might have in a situation like that.
There's some beauty to that you weren't zeroed in on that, what you really felt you wanted, which is musical, because I think maybe that's what's part of what makes your career and your style and your approach unique.
I agree.
Right? Not coming from ground zero of music, in that respect.
I would have gladly learned only music, and instead I had to learn many different things.
One of your influences was a librarian, Phillips Exeter. Can you talk about that?
This was another story of me being pretty arrogant for my age. The Phillips Exeter Academy Library is one of the most beautiful buildings ever constructed. It's a gorgeous cement and blonde wood and brick sort of museum of books on the Phillips Exeter campus. And my scholarship job was working for the librarians in that building. And they had first editions of Shakespeare folios and, brilliant collections of medieval illuminated manuscripts. And they had a terrible collection of musical theater cast albums. So I suggested to the librarians when I was 14 years old and working there that they improve their collection of musical theater albums. And I gave them a big list of about 75 musicals that I thought they should purchase for the Academy. And I marched in with my list, and Mrs. Thomas did not look happy to see me. And she looked at the list and she said, well, this is too much. It's far too expensive. Maybe we can start with half. And I said, well, why would Exeter want to have an incomplete collection? And she looked at me like she was going to kill me. And she said, perhaps next year we'll get the other half. And she did. She turned it into a splendid collection of musical theater recordings. And I was always stunned that she took my advice.
Excellent. Well, it's a good segue from the Exeter Library to your new addition to the World's Library, and that is your book, Facing the Music,
Yes.
A Broadway memoir. And it's a beautiful cover, first of all. Who designed and thought of this cover with your head exploding with notes? Incredible.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Is it something you conceived, or is it something that they said, hey, I know a little bit about you, let me try this idea?
It is the opposite of what I was imagining for the cover of the book. I was picturing a conductor, an audience, perhaps maybe musicians below, actors up ahead. Because when you conduct, you're in the center of these three worlds. But his name is Richard Leones, and he is Norwegian. And he came up with the idea of the music notes becoming the head, or the head becoming the music notes, depending on which way you read it. And I think it's just brilliant.
Yeah, it's really brilliant.
I've always had lots of stories. I I spent 34 years conducting Broadway shows, and it's a remarkable place to be. You're in the center of this world that exists to tell a story. You've got the audience behind you. You feel them on the back of your neck. Musicians packed into the pit below you. And
can I interrupt, because I've watched a couple other interviews with you.
yes,
They're all wonderful. You've said this before. You feel the audience
yes,
on the back of your neck, and this is. I mean, I'm a performer. I understand it to a certain degree, but this is obviously something that's impacted you, and I'd love for you to tell us what is that? What is
Sure.
that feeling, or what is that? Why it comes up so much for you when you're talking?
The physical position that a conductor is in, you're part of the audience. You're one of the people watching the show. So you become joined with them the way audiences become joined together. I've found that when you are previewing a new show, say, and trying to figure out what's working and what's not working, you don't listen to what individual people say about it. You figure out what the audience is feeling about it. And you can tell what an audience is feeling. When they're ahead of the story and wish they weren't, when they don't understand what's happening, when they can't understand the words because the diction isn't right or the music is unbalanced. And as a conductor, I can't help but join into that collective appetite for the show. And at the same time, I am a performer in the show. I am making decisions about the music. I'm collaborating with the actors. I'm making sure they're with me and not behind and not ahead. And when they take their breaths, I try to take my breath so that we're all together. And hopefully the orchestra will breathe with me as well. So it's about unifying all these different points of view into the one moment of theater that's actually happening.
Amazing. Well, I mean, that's amazing. That's beautiful. Sorry.
It's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah,
It's
really
a thrilling
great.
place to be.
So let's circle back. What was the impetus to write the book?
I gave a graduation speech up at North Country School. I gave a commencement address 6 years ago. And they'd asked for 10 minutes or so. I gave them 25 plus 2 songs, kind of put on a big show and talked about being gay and talked about my Parkinson's and a lot of things that maybe North Country School wasn't quite sure that they wanted to hear about. But it all went beautifully and the speech was very nicely received. And Judith Regan came up to me afterwards. I didn't know who she was. And she said that she thought that my speech could be a book. And I thought that was very nice. And I went on to the next person who had something nice to say to me. But Judith went to my husband and said, your husband, David, doesn't take me seriously, but I really am a publisher. And I think that this speech should be a book. So he convinced me that she was legit. And I had a nice lunch with her down in her chic office. And I started writing, and I was writing for the next 6 years. And the book is not about, the book is not about North Country School, but it springs from the person I became at North Country School. And it's about my career as a Broadway music director and the teachers who got me there and the extraordinary things that happened on that podium.
Now,
which people don't really have an idea of.
I'm sure that going, live. All right, so my question is this: tell us about coming out as a gay man, because it's so important for people to hear these stories. And I don't mean it for only people who are struggling with coming out in their community, but also for people who are listening to those who are coming out as gay and they're not gay, but they need to hear these stories because they understand from your point of view,
right,
what is that about? So can you tell us a little bit?
Well, for me, it was the problems were more in my head than they were in the world around me. In high school, I remember thinking, oh my God, am I gay? I was actually in the Exeter Library at the time on my scholarship job. And I thought, well, I don't think I'm gay. I don't want to be gay. So no, I'm not gay, but maybe I'm gay. And then it was about 4 years of me thinking that maybe I was gay and then deciding that I wasn't gay.
What are the things inside you that make you say, maybe I'm gay, or no, I'm not? Why am, what were the indicators for you?
Well, the obvious one was being attracted to the athletic upperclassmen
Sure.
who were all around me. All this sort of the Phillips Exeter campus can look like a fashion shoot at times. All these rich preppy boys. But at the same time, I didn't know what being gay meant, and I thought it meant a life of shame and a life of being secondary, and it just didn't seem like the great choice to make. When I finally actually met somebody and had a romantic evening with them, it seemed very obvious that I was gay and that was going to be a wonderful part of my life. And that element of accepting it myself and then telling my friends was remarkably easy. I was in a group of theater people who were grappling with the same thing, or were at least completely open to it. And coming out as gay in the profession of the musical theater is not very difficult. Nobody punishes you or rejects you or thinks anything other than, well, that's perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Coming out as a person with Parkinson's was much harder for me, much later in my life. Because when I was diagnosed, I really thought that I wouldn't be able to work if people knew that I had Parkinson's.
Didn't your doctor say to you, how long have you had Parkinson's? And you were...
When I walked into the room, it was a stunningly cruel way to diagnose somebody. I was having trouble with my shoulder. I thought it was a conducting injury, and this physical therapist had recommended a neurologist for me to see. And I thought, a neurologist, really? For my shoulder? And I went into his office and he said, how long have you had Parkinson's? And I said, what's Parkinson's? I think he thought he was doing me a favor by ripping off the Band-Aid and getting to the point.
Yeah.
And clearly he was trained in a way that he could tell visually. I mean, he was correct, but it was a hard way to hear it. And my reaction to that diagnosis was, we must hide this. And
why do you feel like that was so important for you to hide it?
well, conducting is a physical job. My body is my instrument as a conductor. And Parkinson's, for me, there are many different, Parkinson's affects different people in completely different ways. But for me, it means a slowness and a stiffness and a lack of coordination and a lack of balance. And I knew that my days as a 8-show-a-week Broadway conductor were not going to last as this progressive disease progresses. And I thought, that people would think, oh, yes, he did a very good job, but now he can't anymore. So let's find somebody younger, better, stable, healthier.
They might be looking for mistakes, and they might be looking
Absolutely.
for, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I hid it, and I didn't hide it very well, because you can't hide it very well. And it got very uncomfortable with people who loved me dearly and who I loved and I wasn't telling the truth to. It was a terrible couple of years. And finally, I just couldn't bear it anymore. And it was so obvious that there was a problem. And so I told people sort of one by one, I have Parkinson's. And they said, well, I know. Or, oh, thank God, you finally said it, so now I can help you. And let's figure out a way that you can work on our next show together. And I wouldn't dream of doing a show without you. You're the most valuable part of my team, etc. The reaction was so kind and so constructive. The fear of my coming out as a person with Parkinson's turned out to be much worse than the actual disease at that time.
And what were the parallels between coming out as gay and coming out with Parkinson's? Or are there?
I love being gay. I think it's a great part of my life.
Well, that's good. I mean, that would be awful if you didn't.
I don't love having Parkinson's.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
And the world's reaction was was your local family, your community and your family, were they as creative and constructive when you came out as gay, like you say that people were with Parkinson's?
There was no real reaction to my coming out as gay. My family was like, "Oh, okay."
Did they say, "Yeah, we kind of knew that," or were they also shocked?
My father said he was surprised, and he asked me a question, and then it was over. And my mother cried a little bit, and she said, "I just want to make sure that you have somebody that you'll be with for the rest of your life."
It's beautiful.
And my grandmother, my mother's mother, she came to me that night and she said, "Could you write down on this piece of paper a few organizations that I could contribute to?" And she handed me her pot roast recipe, which she had made for dinner that night. And I took the pot roast recipe and I wrote, I think it was the Gay Men's Health Crisis, and I forget what the other one was. But within a year, she was the president of PFLAG in her Syracuse community, my grandmother, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. And the next year, she was the Grand Marshal of the Gay Parade in Syracuse.
Amazing.
So she leapt on board.
Right on.
Yeah, she was great. She was great.
It's interesting that people from, older generations, for me anyway, I think a lot of other people too, we assume the worst. They're going to hold on to some of those older beliefs and values. But I am shocked. Similarly with my mom, one of my nephews came out and she was just like engaged and wanted to learn more, and flat out said, "I loved you before you told me. Why am I going to not love you after?"
Right.
Yeah.
That was my experience. I'm in a very protected environment working in the theater in New York. Yeah. I know that the world is not like that.
Yeah.
But it was like that for me, and that's my world.
So for you, the title of your book, Facing the Music, is very, very wide, very powerful, wide ranging with the experiences in your life.
Exactly.
What point did you truly face the music? Was there anything that finally made you face the music? Or can you talk about that, as it relates to the title of the book?
Well, facing the music for me means many things. It means standing in front of an orchestra and facing them and leading them and becoming one with them and making music with them, accompanying a singer. And it also means, the phrase means in the English language, facing dead on something that needs to be addressed. And the opening night of Curtains, which is a Broadway musical I conducted in New York, I was having a little trouble with my left arm, and I wasn't dealing with it. I was ignoring it and pretending that I wasn't having that problem. And we were in previews for the show. I was very busy, working very hard. And on opening night of Curtains, my score disappeared about an hour before the opening night performance. And it turned out that the orchestrator had accidentally taken it with his music and had sent it in a car with the driver up to Connecticut.
Oh.
It was a nightmare. So I sent an intern of mine off to get the score, and he borrowed a car and figured out where he could rendezvous with the guy's driver in some gas station in Westchester. And I started the show without the score. it was opening night. We weren't going to wait. I had to go, and I conducted about 40 minutes without the score that night before the intern, bedraggled in his tuxedo, opening night, came into the pit and handed my score up to me, open to the next song I had to conduct. But conducting without my score for those first 40 minutes illuminated to me exactly how much I was not using my left arm, which, with the score in front of me, I was just turning pages whenever I needed to with my left arm. But as a standing up with using both arms to conduct, because I didn't have a score, I didn't use my left arm at all. It just hung there, inexpressive, not contributing. And I thought, this is wrong. This is not how I conduct. Something's wrong with my body. And I couldn't not face it anymore, which is when I went to the neurologist. My body sort of decided it was time to deal with this.
Yeah, got you. We're going to finish up in a couple minutes, but I wanted to ask you if there is a connection between those endurance tests in the mountains with your dad and what you're, well, not only what you're working with now with Parkinson's, but just also before the diagnosis, your powerful career. You know, you've worked with some incredible people. You've created some wonderful Broadway magic. Did any of that connect to those days where you'd rather be playing, but you were listening to Dad?
You know, yes, of course it is. It's the kind of character building childhood that you would want a child to have. You know, to do something hard, like climb a mountain and succeed at it, and stand on the top and look around and enjoy the view. And it is a wonderful thing. I make a big deal of wishing that I was playing the piano when I was mountain climbing, because I did wish I was playing the piano when I was mountain climbing. But I think for anybody to accomplish something as splendid as, you know, getting up to the top of a mountain and seeing a view that you could only see by having exerted that amount of effort to see it is a very wonderful life lesson. My father takes it further than most human beings do. He loves the mountains, and there are 46 high peaks in the Adirondacks, and if you climb all 46 of them, you become a 46er. And he became a 46er 10 times over, and then stopped counting, but kept climbing. He had me as a 46er by the time I was 12 years old, through no great desire of my own. Our dog became a 46er as well. I think the dog enjoyed it more than I did.
I'm sure. Wasn't distracted with playing the piano. So
that's right.
All right, two more thoughts for you. One is there a favorite song you have from a musical? Is it something that maybe defines you? Is there a favorite song, something that you are really deeply connected with?
That's such a hard question to answer.
Because they're all your babies, right?
Yes, and my answer is usually whatever I'm working on right now. I was lucky enough to be in the original cast of Stephen Sondheim's Merrily We Roll Along, which was this beautiful score that he wrote for a very flawed, difficult, aggravatingly sort of impossible to fix show called Merrily We Roll Along. The score to that musical is so beautiful and so creative and constructed in a way that is so intelligent. It's always just been one of my favorite things in the world. There's a song from that called Opening Doors, where Sondheim takes you through what it's like to be a young artist in New York, coming to town, figuring out who you are, figuring out who your friends are, struggling, to try to get your work seen by producers, having a little success, having a little failure. It's an amazing little piece of playwriting that he does in that piece. And it's always been one of my favorites. I appeared in
Uh,
the very end of it as an audition pianist in the
great.
original cast
All
of
right.
that.
Last question.
Sure.
Advice for those who are facing challenges and striving to make a life out of something they love.
Well, if you're really up for a life in the theater, get ready, because it is hard. And if you're having second doubts about coming along and joining the circus here, don't do it. That's the advice I always got. I never listened to it for 1 second because I knew that I was different and I was going to be the one who made it. And in fact, I did have some good luck. That would be part one of my advice, which is if you don't have to do it, please don't. But if you do, and you're going to have to learn this for yourself at some point, but maybe hearing me say it will make it a little easier or a little bit more obvious when you need to say it. But tell the truth about yourself. That's the only way as an artist that you ultimately can figure out what it is you need to say. And sometimes the things that you are most concerned about in yourself are the most valuable things in yourself. And if you can embrace them and bring them forward and learn from them and teach other people with them, then I think you're going to be well on your way to being a first-class artist.
Wonderful, wonderful work. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you. You are such a lovely man to talk to.
Oh, thank you. One more time, Facing the Music, a Broadway memoir by David Loud. Regan Arts Books published it. So much love and thanks to Judith Regan for connecting us. What a beautiful conversation. Thank you, David.
I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.